There's a specific type of silent anxiety that only a certain group of people understand. It is the anxiety of the open door. You wake up, no alarm clock, no commute, no boss breathing down your neck. Ideally, this should feel like paradise. You are, technically, free. But for some reason, instead of feeling liberated, you feel a low-grade hum of panic before your feet even hit the floor. You look at the clock, and despite having nowhere to be, you feel like you are already behind. You sit down to work, but the freedom you fought so hard for suddenly feels heavy. You check your email, then you check Slack, then you stare at a blank document. You decide to make coffee first. Then you realize the kitchen needs cleaning. 2 hours pass. You haven't done the work, but you are exhausted. If this sounds familiar, I want you to know something important. You are not lazy. You are not undisciplined. You are trapped in a neurological loop known as the freedom paradox. We often think that burnout comes from having too much work to do. But in the freelance world, or the world of the solitary creator, burnout often comes from having too many decisions to make. Let's look at the science of why this happens. When you worked a traditional 9 to 5, the structure was provided for you. The order was external. You walked into a building and your brain knew, now we work. But when you stripped away that external structure to gain autonomy, you didn't just remove the bad parts, like the commute or the office politics. You also removed the scaffolding that held your attention in place. According to research by Dr. Sophie Leroy from the University of Washington, your brain struggles immensely with what she calls attention residue. This is a cognitive cost. Every time you switch tasks from manager mode, answering emails and planning the day, to maker mode, writing, coding, or designing, a part of your attention remains stuck on the previous task. When you are your own boss, you are constantly forcing your brain to switch between these two modes. You are the CEO and the intern. You are the visionary and the janitor. This constant micro-switching leaves your brain in a state of what Cal Newport calls a persistent self-imposed cognitive handicap. You aren't just tired, you are fragmenting your own cognitive capacity. But it goes deeper than just distraction. It is about the burden of choice. Psychologist Barry Schwartz calls this the paradox of choice. We assume that more freedom means more happiness. But the research suggests that an overabundance of options leads to paralysis. When you sit down at your desk with 8 hours of unstructured time and 5 different projects you could work on, your brain doesn't see freedom. It sees a threat. It sees the possibility of making the wrong choice. This creates a phenomenon called decision fatigue. Before you write the first word or edit the first frame, you have burned through your limited supply of willpower just trying to decide what to do and when to do it. Philosopher Jordan Peterson talks about the balance between order and chaos. Too much order is tyranny. That is the soul-crushing corporate job you left. But too much chaos, that is aimless paralysis. That is where you are right now. You are drowning in potential, but starving for momentum. You feel guilty when you aren't working because you could be working, and you feel guilty when you are working because you aren't working efficiently. This is the trap. The lack of boundaries hasn't made you free. It has made you a prisoner of your own unquiet mind. So how do we fix this? How do we build a structure that supports us without becoming the very cage we try to escape?
The shift begins with a single, uncomfortable realization. We have completely misunderstood the word discipline. For most of us, especially those who left corporate jobs, discipline feels like a punishment. It feels like a school teacher standing over your shoulder or a boss demanding overtime. So when we become freelancers, we rebel against it. We think, I don't need a schedule, I need flow. But here is the truth that philosophy has taught us for centuries, from the Stoics to Immanuel Kant. Freedom is not the absence of constraints. Freedom is the ability to choose your own constraints. Kant called this self-legislation. He argued that if you act only on your impulses, sleeping in because you feel like it, or working only when inspiration strikes, you aren't actually free. You are a slave to your biology and your environment. True freedom is when you set a rule for yourself and you follow it, not because you have to, but because you chose to. This isn't just philosophy. It is deeply rooted in modern psychology. For years, psychologists believed in a concept called ego depletion. The idea was that willpower is like a battery. Every time you use it, it drains. If you resist checking your phone, it drains the battery. Eventually, you hit zero and you crash. But recent research in self-determination theory has added a fascinating nuance to this. Studies by researchers like Moeller, Deci, and Ryan found that not all effort is equal. They discovered a difference between controlled choice and autonomous choice. Controlled choice is when you do something because you feel pressured, either by a boss or by your own guilt. This does drain your battery. It exhausts you rapidly. However, autonomous choice, doing something because you genuinely align with the value of it, does not deplete your energy. In fact, it can be energizing. This is the key to breaking the freedom paradox. You don't need a routine to force yourself to work. You need a routine to automate the decision to start so you can bypass the struggle entirely. Think of Haruki Murakami, the famous novelist. When he's writing a book, his routine is rigid. He wakes up at 4 a.m., he works for 5 hours, he runs 10 kilometers, reads, and sleeps at 9 p.m. He does this every single day. When asked why, he didn't say it was about discipline. He said, the repetition itself becomes the important thing. It is a form of mesmerism. I mesmerize myself to reach a deeper state of mind. This is the scientific secret, mesmerism. When you rely on willpower to start working every day, you are fighting a battle against your own brain. You are engaging the prefrontal cortex to make a decision. This is expensive. It creates friction. But when you have a set routine, a boot-up sequence, you remove the decision. You aren't asking yourself, should I start writing now? You're simply executing a program. By doing this, you bypass decision fatigue. You stop bleeding energy on the question of when to work, and you save that energy for the work itself. You create a container, a riverbank that allows your creativity to actually flow rather than spilling out into a muddy puddle of procrastination. So the goal of the routine I'm about to share is not to turn you into a robot. It is to protect your maker mode from your manager mode. It is to create a structure rigid enough to hold your chaos, but safe enough to let you experiment. We need to build your boot-up sequence. We need to install the triggers that tell your brain, we're entering the deep end now. Here's exactly how we do it.
To implement this, we're going to use a concept called a creative anchor. You cannot control how you feel when you wake up. Some days you will feel motivated. Most days you won't. But you can control the environment you wake up into. Here's the 3-step protocol that stabilizes the chaos. Step 1. The input fast. The biggest mistake we make is destroying our attention span within the first 10 minutes of the day. The moment you look at your phone, check a notification, or read an email, you have lost. You have invited the entire world into your bedroom. You have shifted from proactive to reactive. Remember Dr. Leroy's concept of attention residue? If you see a stressful email at 8 a.m., a part of your brain is stuck on that email for hours, even if you try to ignore it. So, the rule is simple but non-negotiable. No digital input for the first 60 minutes. Treat this as a sacred boundary. Keep your phone in another room overnight. Buy a cheap alarm clock. When you wake up, your brain is in a theta state. It is fluid, creative, and impressionable. Don't fill that space with other people's noise. Instead, execute a simple, analog boot-up sequence. Drink water, make coffee, sit in a specific chair. Maybe read 2 pages of a physical book. This sequence signals to your body that it is time to be awake without spiking your cortisol. You are protecting your peace before you spend it. Step 2. The deep work sprint. Once the boot-up is complete, you don't check what needs to be done. You already know what needs to be done. You dive straight into a deep work block. I recommend the 90-minute block. This aligns with your body's ultradian rhythms. For 90 minutes, you do the one thing that moves the needle. Not emails, not administrative tasks. Those are manager mode tasks. You are in maker mode. Here's the key. Phone in another room. Research shows that the mere presence of a smartphone, even if it is turned off and face down on the desk, reduces cognitive capacity. It is a constant drain on your attention because your brain is actively working not to check it. Remove the option. Lock the door. For 90 minutes, you are unreachable. This is where you leverage Parkinson's law, the idea that work expands to fill the time available. By giving yourself a tight 90-minute container, you force your brain to focus. You will achieve more in this silence than you usually do in 8 hours of distracted multitasking. Step 3. The hard stop. This is the step that most freelancers ignore, and it is the reason they burn out. In a corporate job, the lights go off. The security guard locks the door. You have to leave. As a freelancer, your office is your mind, so you never really leave. You must create an artificial hard stop. Pick a time, say 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., and respect it as if the building is catching fire. Close the laptop, shut down the browser tabs. Say out loud, shut down complete. This isn't just about resting. It is about psychological detachment. If you don't have a clear end to your workday, your brain creates a background anxiety loop, constantly scanning for what you might have forgotten. By having a hard stop, you give yourself permission to be a human being again. You allow your subconscious to recover so that you can do it all again tomorrow. This routine isn't a prison. It is the banks of the river. It channels your energy so it can actually flow.
There's a famous line by the writer Gustave Flaubert that sums this up perfectly. Be regular and orderly in your life, so that you may be violent and original in your work. That is the secret. That is the point of all this structure. We don't build these routines because we love rules. We build them because we love the work. We build them because we want to go deep. We want to create something that matters. And we know that we cannot do that if we are constantly fighting our own brains for focus. The freedom paradox is only a paradox if you think freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That is the freedom of a child. The freedom of an adult, the freedom of a professional is different. It is the freedom to design a life that supports your best self. It is the freedom to say no to the chaos of the world so you can say yes to your own craft. When you implement the input fast, the deep work sprint, and the hard stop, you aren't restricting yourself. You are liberating yourself from the tyranny of decision fatigue. You are stepping out of the gray zone of half working, half worrying, and stepping into the clarity of full engagement. Remember this: your creativity is not a random accident. It is a biological process that needs safety to thrive. When you give your mind a structure it can trust, you lower the threat level. You tell your nervous system, it's okay. We have a plan. You can let go now. And in that safety, in that quiet space between the banks of the river, is where the real magic happens. That is where the flow returns. So, here is my challenge to you for this week. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. Just pick one anchor. Maybe it's the input fast, the first hour of the day completely offline. Maybe it's the hard stop, committing to closing your laptop at 6 p.m. no matter what. Try it for 7 days. See how the noise settles. See how the anxiety lifts. And I'm curious, which part of the freelancer's paradox do you struggle with the most? Is it starting the day? Or is it knowing when to stop? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for being here and for trusting the process. Until next time, keep the flow true.